My name is Gill. I'm currently affiliated as a Senior Visiting Fellow at the London School of Economics in the International Development Department. But what's relevant for the work I'm doing here is that for 6 years I was the Poverty Advisor with the International Union for the Conservation of Nature based in Switzerland, and the work I'm working on here is work developed through them. And the topic I've chosen to work on is landscapes for sustainability and food security, gathering better data to underpin better economic, ecological and social resilience. IUCN, that's the organisation, was trying to address the fact that in too many cases conservation organisations start by closing an area and excluding the human beings in order to protect the animals. Along with several other bodies, IUCN has been trying to use the concept of the broader landscape, so the forest, the farmland outside, a broader territory, if you like, to get a better understanding of livelihoods and a better understanding of the symbiosis between farmland and forest land from the point of view of livelihoods, with the intention of changing the way in which we do conservation in the future. IUCN is responsible for the 6 conservation categories that everybody in the world uses, ranging from relatively open to people to completely, tightly protected and closed from people. And our intention is to produce evidence that will improve the calibration, if you like, of those categories. I think that as climate change and food security problems continue to grow in the world, it's really important that we get all aspects of rural land use better understood. We needed better data than there was to be able to show what the uses of forest by local people actually were. We had 23 sites worldwide in areas ranging from relatively low forest cover to high forest cover, and ranging from dry forest to very dense tropical forest. And we discovered overall that the average contribution to total annual income of forest was about 25%, which is much higher than people thought. It ranges from about 9% in forest just outside Beijing through to 83% among pygmies in the Congo Basin. So very, very high in some areas, particularly among women. The forest products consumed are much more diverse in range than the ones that are sold, and the non-cash forest income stream to households for energy, food, medicine, house construction, materials, fibre and so on is 3 to 4 times more valuable than the products sold. So this is an invisible fraction that we've made visible through this work. I think that the results from this make certain sorts of action extremely important. Firstly, policymakers at the national and international level need to be helped to recognise just how reliant people are on forests, especially poor people. We need a better government valuation of forests from this point of view. We need a different way of doing conservation, which is where we started. For REDD+ policy, which is payments for forest protection to offset carbon emissions, we need a different approach, and for how the private sector uses forests. And the other thing we learnt is that when you look at the poor themselves, you've got 2 different categories. Those who live in areas which are not so far from markets, from schools and so on, can be expected to exit from poverty and from forest dependence fairly rapidly as their children go to school and there's the chance to move on. In more remote areas, that takes many, many, many decades longer. And I'm particularly concerned about the chronic poor in these remote areas because that's where many of the conservation protected areas are. They have no alternative sources of income. If we take away what might be 50% of their annual income by closing forests to them, we really bring them to the edge of starvation. So it's very important that we don't create accidental increases in the vulnerability of these people without knowing what we're doing. We have to have the data to understand that we have to protect their livelihoods as much as we have to protect the forests and the human beings. I've been at Bellagio for a week now, and I had some ideas before I came about how Bellagio would help, but once I'm here I can see other ways too. I knew that I would have time to push the analysis further than we've done so far. I especially want to look at these spatial aspects of poverty, the fact that people in remote areas are in a really different situation and much harder to help than people in less remote areas. And I'm interested in how far we can use the concept of landscape, not just among conservation people, but more widely. At the moment, it's not well understood by policymakers at national and international levels, and it may be that it's not the right concept, but I want to think about that this month. And what I see now I get here is I can try out some of those ideas on people from very different disciplinary backgrounds and see if the ideas seem plausible to them or whether they are actually think it's more complicated than it's worth. So that's my plan for the month. Thank you.